I'm sorry, like, I shouldn't be laughing, but at this point, just like the circumstances we're in, it's just, if I don't laugh, I'm gonna walk out on the freeway and play hopscotch blindfolded. Our government, get this, they're cutting healthcare, they're cutting childcare, but they have the means to make a $1.5 trillion defense budget. Okay. Hi everyone, if you're new, welcome. If you're not new, you know what fucking time it is, bitch. It's time for the Daily Scream. A new budget proposal just dropped, and the premise is fairly simple. We can afford war, we just can't afford, well, you. Our president literally said, we can't take care of daycare. Oh, but we can take care of a military budget that's larger than the next several countries combined. Right. So just so we're all clear on the math here, missiles, yes. Toddlers, you can go fuck yourselves. And it isn't just childcare. They're cutting healthcare, housing, climate programs, agricultural programs. You know, agriculture, no biggie, just the people responsible for our food. Meanwhile, they're expanding on immigration detention.
Okay, she just said the quiet part out loud. They're cutting agriculture funding. You know, the thing that keeps us all from starving, while simultaneously pumping up a military budget bigger than the next several countries combined. Missiles? Yes, absolutely. Here's a blank check. Toddlers getting fed? Nah, figure it out yourselves. This isn't even a political argument anymore. It's a basic math problem, and apparently the people running things failed third grade arithmetic.
Facilities, more beds, more enforcement. So our government just spat in all of our faces and said, we can't afford to take care of your children, but we can afford to build facilities to hold them in. We can't afford to fund healthcare, but we can't afford to cut climate programs that are preventing you from getting cancer. And then they were like, the states can handle the rest. Right, because nothing says stability like forcing 50 states to patchwork different systems while we're literally in an economic, political, and literal climate crisis. So, moral of the story, what this new budget essentially told all of us, if it protects power, fund it. If it protects people, yeah, you can cut that shit. That really isn't a budget, that's a value system. And in case you weren't aware, we're all at like the bottom of the barrel.
After voting for Donald Trump's cuts to Medicaid, Congressman Zach Nunn said, and I'm quoting here, I think the myth here is that rural hospitals are going to close down. Senator Garriott, has that proven true?
It's not a myth. It's already happening. The cuts are going to be pretty significant for Iowa because about 20% of Iowans depend on Medicaid for their health insurance. About 40% of kids and 40% of births are paid for by Medicaid. And so that's a huge piece for hospitals. And if they can't make ends meet, they're going to have to close their doors. And that's impacting health care for people all throughout the state, whether they're on Medicaid or not. We're already seeing the cuts having an impact on rural clinics. We're seeing layoffs in our metro areas, and it's just the beginning.
Neighborhood health center.
Hold on. Did she just say this is just the beginning? Because Senator Garriott isn't up here being dramatic. She's reading receipts, 20% of Iowans on Medicaid, 40% of kids, 40% of births paid for by this program. And Congressman Zach Nunn sat in front of cameras and called it a myth that rural hospitals would close, since the hospitals are already closing. While you're talking, that's not a myth. That's a preview of the disaster you voted for. And the people who are going to suffer most are the exact same rural communities that showed up and voted for these cuts. The irony is physically painful.
Work. It makes people healthy, allow kids to have health care. The Affordable Care Act works. It provides thousands of small business owners with coverage so they can run their small businesses and not be broke by health care. But I'll tell you, what the MAGA Republicans have in store is bad news for New York State. We need to restore the cuts, and we need to put people in front of tax cuts for billionaires.
3:28 in the morning. Republicans just voted against restoring health care, feeding hungry kids, stopping President Trump's reckless, ridiculous war in Iran. And they voted for more money for ICE. They are unwilling to help Americans with their high costs, unwilling to restore the health care that they've cut, and unwilling to end this war that is making us much less safe. Democrats are trying to restore people's health care and put more money in people's pockets. And Republicans just want to continue to fund the chaos that is creating massive costs for the American people.
It takes an average of 10 years to be diagnosed with endometriosis. You go back to your doctor and back to your doctor, and you're diagnosed with chronic fatigue, and you're diagnosed with something else, and people think you're crazy, and you have to stay in a dark room. And I heard someone say, my mother too. And I remember it. I remember her crying in her room as a child and having pain that, she went to find herbalists and anything she could find that could help her, because her doctor had nothing. It's your period, it hurts. And that is the experience of so many women who experience this.
Congress is looking to enact huge Medicaid cuts that will effectively cripple Medicaid. This is not only going to have a devastating impact on people who rely on...
So let me get this straight. Republicans voted against restoring health care, against feeding hungry kids, against ending what she's calling a reckless war, but voted for more ICE funding, and the kicker? They're calling this fiscal responsibility. Listen, you can disagree on policy all day long. That's fine. That's democracy. But when your voting record literally says detention facilities, yes, children eating, no. That's not a budget. That's a confession. She said it perfectly. It's a value system, and this one values power over people every single time.
This for healthcare, it's going to have a devastating impact on our entire economy. Hospitals, community mental health organizations, healthcare organizations, and a lot of pharmaceutical industries, as well as nursing, many other programs rely on Medicaid to keep functioning. These places will close, people will lose their jobs. I used to manage and run and work in community mental health for over 20 years. It does a lot of things you might not be aware of. Youth getting out of the foster care industry rely on programs funded by Medicaid in order to give them a leg up so that they can be successful adults. I used to help manage some of these emerging adult programs. Now, while I'm in California and there's a little bit of a different funding stream, that's not true for the rest of the country. People struggling at their lowest points rely on this for medication, for services, to help them get a leg up, sometimes even to support them in job training so they don't have to rely on Medicaid anymore. But without those supports, there's no leg up. People don't have the support to get out of those systems. And most of the people that I have worked with over my 20 years do actually want to get out of that system. This is not to say that I value people for the work that they can do. I just want to kind of bash at a misconception that people have. I am afraid we're going to see a lot more police unalivings of people if they don't have safety nets to support when people are struggling.
20 years in community mental health, and she's dropping facts that nobody in Congress wants to hear. When you cut mental health services, people don't just disappear. They end up in emergency rooms. They end up in psychiatric facilities. They end up in police encounters. And all of those outcomes cost the taxpayer far more than the programs you gutted. This is the part that drives me absolutely crazy about this debate. Cutting Medicaid isn't saving money. It's just moving the bill somewhere more expensive and more dangerous. You're not being fiscally responsible. You're being fiscally illiterate, and people are dying for it.
The most. It's not a secret that people experiencing florid psychotic symptoms sometimes encounters with police, and it doesn't go well. Plus, this doesn't just take away taxpayer funds from the taxpayer towards services. When these services are cut, then people end up going to the emergency room, and people end up going to psychiatric emergency facilities. And those cost far more to the taxpayer than most of these programs do. There's a vote tonight at 1 a.m., which is creepy. So if you want to call your local congressperson, letting them know you do not want these cuts, you do not want this budget, this is not a good idea. It's going to be devastating for the American people. I encourage you to do so.
United Healthcare has denied my pre-authorization for my radical hysterectomy and treatment for my very severe endometriosis pretty much 4 hours before my surgery is supposed to start. I'm already here at the hospital. I'm already set up, got my IV going, and my surgery is scheduled for 12:05, and apparently United Healthcare can't meet with my doctor, my surgeon, until noon, and they're requiring to do a peer-to-peer review of the needs for my surgery because they are deeming it not medically necessary. To be clear, I was diagnosed with severe endometriosis, stage 4, and frozen pelvis back in 2018, which I didn't even know that I had after asking many, many doctors for help until we tried to have kids. And when I started doing IVF, we realized, oh my gosh, you have really advanced endometriosis.
We are facing an existential crisis in America. Our democracy.
She's literally in a hospital gown, prepped for surgery, and United Healthcare called 4 hours before her procedure to say not medically necessary, endometriosis, frozen pelvis. Diagnosed back in 2018 after years of being dismissed, and some insurance desk jockey who has never met her gets to override her surgeon. This is the system that MAGA folks are defending when they vote against healthcare reform. This isn't abstract policy. This is a real woman, IV in her arm, about to have her surgery canceled. And the same people who scream about government overreach have absolutely nothing to say about insurance companies playing God with your body. The audacity is genuinely breathtaking.
Is in tatters. House Republicans just passed a devastating, big, ugly ass bill. There's nothing beautiful about it that will kick millions of Americans like me off of Medicaid, which, by the way, covered all of my cancer treatment over the last year and a half. It's going to throw millions of vulnerable people off of nutrition assistance in the form of SNAP and rob $500 million from Medicare. It's going to reverse all kinds of green energy tax credits that the Biden administration gave to businesses and individuals. It's going to harm our planet and hurt businesses. It's also going to pillage and plumb our public lands by removing all kinds of environmental protections that were enacted by, again, President Biden. And I'm not even covering all of the just horrible things that they shoved into this bill. But CNN and the legacy media have been focused on this.
The Senate reconvened this morning to try and end the government shutdown and come to some sort of an agreement. The Democrats are willing to negotiate if the Republicans agree to address the health care crisis that they created. Now, the Democratic funding bill that includes the health care provisions did not pass in the Senate this morning. They reconvened after 10. They just voted. The final vote was 47 to 53. Every Democrat voted for this bill. Every Republican voted against it. Now, what does this mean? Why can't this pass? Why is the government shut down if the Republicans are in control of Congress? Well, it's simple. The budget reconciliation bill, that bill that passed on July 3rd, that didn't need, it was a reconciliation bill. It didn't need a 60-vote threshold. So the Republicans just needed their own votes to pass that budget bill. However, regular legislation typically requires bipartisan support with a 60-vote threshold. This means they need 60 votes in order to end this shutdown, because in order to pass that legislation that they're trying to pass and weren't able to pass, hence the shutdown, they need 60 votes. So in the Senate...
Okay, so she's breaking down the Senate math here, and it's actually important, so pay attention. The big ugly bill passed through reconciliation, meaning Republicans only needed their own votes. But now to end a government shutdown and pass regular legislation, they need 60 votes, which means they need 8 Democrats to cross over. And here's where it gets wild. If Democrats cave and vote with Republicans to avoid the shutdown, they're essentially rubber stamping all those Medicaid cuts they've been fighting against. So it's a trap. Vote no and get blamed for the shutdown. Vote yes and betray the 16 million people about to lose insurance. This is political chess being played with people's lives as the pieces.
They need 8 Democrats. They had 2, but now they need 8 total Democrats who will vote with the Republicans to pass the Republicans' agenda. See, Trump and the Republicans want a continuing resolution to be funded so that existing funding levels can continue as is. And if the Democrats approve that to avoid the shutdown, well, then the Democrats would be approving all of their cuts, all of their policies, and everything in the one big beautiful bill Trump's been pushing. That means all of the Medicaid cuts would continue, people's insurance rates would skyrocket by 75%, and then it'd be a mess. So we'll see what happens with all of this, but I'll keep you updated for sure. Please like, follow, and share so I can continue to provide you with content, and I appreciate you being here.
There was a Democratic representative, I believe she was a lawmaker in Minnesota. Her name was Melissa Horton. It was a bill that was health care for illegal migrants. She was the one person that voted against the bill for illegal health care for migrants. And she came out after the bill was voted upon. She was crying and she was upset. She's like, look, I don't like to go against the wave of the people, but this is not right for the American taxpayer, and it's not right for the Minnesotans that live here, and it's not fair to them. Her and her husband were shot killed. They were shot dead a week later after she voted against that bill.
So remember when we were trying to stop Trump's so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and I was screaming every day about how many people would suffer if we didn't stop it? Well, it's happening, and it's so messed up, you guys. So the bill, as you'll remember, was signed into law last year. Republicans had a big party when it passed, and it was sold as like a win for working Americans. Republicans also tried to rebrand it as the Working Families Tax Cut. Of course, that was BS as well. The average working American only ended up getting an extra $350 on their return, well below what was promised. Meanwhile, we're spending easily $1,000 a year extra on Trump's tariffs. Like, the math isn't mathing. Anyway, so the bill cut over $1 trillion from Medicaid, but Medicare benefits from low-income seniors, and $300 billion from SNAP. And we heard a lot of dire predictions at the time, that 16 million people could end up uninsured, that the bill could take 9.5 billion meals off the table for SNAP participants, that rural hospitals would shut down in record numbers. But abstract predictions are one thing. We now have proof. We now know, for example, that over 400,000 Arizona...
This right here is the moment where nobody can hide behind, well, we don't know what'll happen yet. 400,000 Arizonans lost SNAP benefits, including 180,000 children, 450,000 New Yorkers losing essential plan coverage by July 1st, 1.5 million New Yorkers becoming uninsured, driving hospital costs up $3 billion annually, 63,000 jobs gone, and she points out the most devious part. Republicans deliberately timed the worst cuts to kick in after the midterms, so they get the votes, their donors get the tax breaks, and the working families get the bill. Later. That's not governance. That's a heist with a 2-year delay.
Have lost SNAP benefits since July, including almost 180,000 children. That is nearly half of the state's participants. It is the worst of anywhere in the country so far, not because Arizona is special, but just because they implemented the bill's changes the fastest. In New York State, they have announced that 450,000 New Yorkers are going to lose their essential plan coverage on July 1st. That is coverage for working, low-income New Yorkers earning between $32,000 and $40,000 a year. 1.5 million New Yorkers will become uninsured. That is going to drive uncompensated hospital care costs up $3 billion annually and eliminate around 63,000 jobs. And let me be clear, these are not just Arizona or New York problems. Experts are saying that what's happening now is just the alarm bell. The same collapse is expected in every state as the bill's changes take full effect. Because remember, Republicans made sure that the worst cuts don't kick in until after the midterms. This bill is pure evil. It made it easier for the top 1% of Americans to hoard their wealth, for companies like Tesla to pay virtually no taxes, for people like Jeff Bezos to remodel another vacation home. Meanwhile, it's making life not just harder, but close to impossible for millions of working Americans. Families won't be able to feed their kids. Veterans won't be able to keep a roof over their heads. Single moms won't be able to afford their cancer treatment.
Trump, like the new big beautiful bill?
Well, yeah. I mean, we'll probably lose our health care and our kids might suffer, but our leader's going to be richer, so we're okay with it.
Ma'am, you just lost your home because of the new bill. Do you regret voting for it?
Oh, not at all. My family's homeless, but at least the libs are mad.
Miss, I would like to open up.
My family's homeless, but at least the libs are mad. I'm sorry. What? She just summed up the entire psychological trap that's been set for millions of Americans. They've been convinced that owning the opposition is worth more than keeping their own health care. A woman in the hospital who can't afford cancer treatment. A kid who can't get subsidized student loans, but hey, billionaires got their tax cuts, so we're winning? This is what happens when you vote out of spite instead of self-interest, and the cruelest part is the people engineering this know exactly what they're doing. They've turned suffering into a culture war trophy and convinced the people suffering to celebrate it.
A checking account with my Social Security check.
I'm sorry, sir. Minimum deposit is $200.
I'm having a heart attack, Doc.
Just relax, sir. I see you have Medicaid. Nurse, just give him some Tylenol and make an appointment 3 years from now.
Doc, I think I'm having a heart attack.
Miss, relax. I see you have Medicaid. Nurse, just give her a couple of cold sandwiches and a 6-ounce juice and make an appointment in 3 years.
I'm currently in the hospital, and they're telling me I can't afford to get my cancer treatment, but at least billionaires have tax cuts. Danny just got accepted into college, but I can't take out any more subsidized loans. But hey, at least billionaires got more tax cuts.